The search for the missing Titanic submarine enters a critical phase as experts say oxygen on the craft could run out Thursday morning local time.
Russia accuses Ukraine of bombing a vital bridge in occupied Crimea with a British-made missile.
Ukraine's allies have pledged billions of dollars in non-military aid during the first day of a recovery conference in London. International political and business leaders discuss reforms in the global financial system in Paris to better tackle climate and poverty challenges. Search efforts have intensified for the missing submersible that lost contact with its mothership on Sunday in the North Atlantic. It was on a deep dive descending to the wreck of the Titanic. Experts say the breathable oxygen keeping the 5 people on board the Titan craft alive will probably run out Thursday morning local time.
We have to remain optimistic and hopeful when you're in a search and rescue case. So we're right in the middle of the search and rescue case. So I don't want to get into a discussion about when that would end with respect to this case.
An international fleet of surveillance vessels and aircraft is forging ahead with the ongoing search and rescue efforts. They have been spurred on by more reports of a regular banging sound in the deep ocean near the Titanic wreck. It could be emanating from the submersible. But each passing second makes it less likely that the passengers will be found alive.
A court in Moscow has rejected an appeal by Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and upheld an earlier ruling that he must remain in custody until late August. The 31-year-old US citizen was arrested on espionage charges in March while on a reporting trip. Last month, the court agreed to keep him in custody until August 30th. Defence lawyers challenged the decision at Thursday's hearing, but the Moscow City Court rejected the appeal. Gershkovich and his employer have denied the spying charges. The US government says he's been wrongfully detained and is demanding his immediate release.
I've had a long history with the Russian government. As a member of Congress, I visited Moscow. As UN ambassador, we dealt with a lot of issues with Russia.
Once a prominent political figure, Bill Richardson now works in the shadows, operating behind the scenes in the murky world of prisoner releases.
We play a role as private citizens in a foundation in pushing both sides to advance humanitarian issues like prisoner exchanges.
He works with the US government to secure the release of US nationals detained abroad. And since February 2022, much of his focus has been on Russia. Some of his cases are extremely high profile.
We participated in the Brittany Griner and the Victor Bout. There are other cases in Russia of Americans that we're participating with and having a dialogue with members of the Russian Federation. We also had worked on Paul Whelan's case in the past, in the Trump administration.
But there are others whose identities he prefers not to disclose. So how does he do it? His work as US Energy Secretary gave him access to some of the top Russian circles, and the rest, he says, comes down to diplomacy. Both Moscow and Washington are working behind the scenes to free their citizens. While overt diplomatic ties between the West and Russia have ground to a standstill following the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, this little-known-about side of relations is still up and running for now. For Richardson, more is needed.
The U.S. government has their strategy, and I'm not interfering in that, especially with the Wall Street Journal reporter. But the strategy is basically dialogue. And, you know, what the Russians want in exchange are Russian prisoners.
Although he freely admits relations are very icy, right now he's holding out hope for 2 other detainees he's working to free.
The negotiations are maybe going a little slow, but we're still talking, and that's positive.
As Ukraine's counteroffensive grinds on, Moscow has accused Kiev of bombing a vital bridge in occupied Crimea with a British-made missile. There were no casualties, but the structure was badly damaged. Ukraine hasn't confirmed it was responsible. It comes as Kiev acknowledges making slow progress in operations to drive Russian forces out of Donetsk and Zaporizhia. They've retaken several villages, including this one, Storozhev, but each victory is hard-fought with significant losses. With this in mind, the German Chancellor has urged Western powers to increase military supplies to Ukraine at a forthcoming summit in Vilnius.
Parallel arbeiten wir mit unseren G7 und EU-Partnern und der Ukraine an wirkungsvollen und langfristigen Sicherheitsgarantien. Unser Ziel dabei ist zweierlei: die Ukraine nachhaltig militärisch zu unterstützen, auch mit modernen westlichen Waffen, und zugleich die wirtschaftliche Widerstandskraft der Ukraine in ihrem Abwehrkampf gegen die russische Aggression zu stärken.
But Russia is also suffering heavy losses. Head of the Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has urged Vladimir Putin to extend mobilization, something he's reluctant to do. Separately, the Kremlin rejects claims by Ukraine's President Zelensky that Russia is planning to attack the Zaporizhia nuclear plant.
Ukraine's allies, one by one, have pledged several $billions in non-military aid during the first day of a two-day recovery conference in London. Delegates from more than 60 countries are attending the event, which is both a fundraising forum and a message to Russia that Ukraine's Western supporters are in it for the long haul. But the figures being asked for are vast, as Ukraine's Prime Minister made clear.
Overall, at least $411 billion is needed for long-term reconstruction. Every day, Russia is inflicting new losses on Ukraine, and unfortunately, this figure will grow.
And Ukraine's Deputy Infrastructure Minister stressed that restoring the country's battered economy is necessary now.
The restoration isn't the consequences of the victory. It's just the part of the resistance. More, we are paying the salaries to our soldiers through the taxes. We're very grateful to our partners which providing us weapons, but the army, Ukrainian army, is big now, demands money.
The EU's Commission President pledged one of the largest amounts of the day, €50 billion, to help Ukraine rebuild.
It's our job and our duty to the Ukrainians who've paid the ultimate sacrifice, that we ensure that this reimagined future becomes reality, brick by brick.
The US has vowed to send an additional $1.3 billion to overhaul Ukraine's energy grid and modernize other critical infrastructure.
Recovery is about laying the foundation for Ukraine to thrive as a secure, independent country, fully integrated with Europe, connected to markets around the world.
And we call on others to follow suit.
The conference continues today, when private investment groups are expected to build on their contributions. International political and business leaders are discussing reforms to the global financial system to better tackle the challenges posed by poverty and climate change. The summit in Paris is being led by French President Emmanuel Macron, who has long argued that the established financial order is outdated and fails to deal with present-day crises.
Si nous regardons les choses en face, les inégalités augmentent, la vulnérabilité climatique ajoute encore au risque et notre monde est soumis à des chocs de plus en plus grands. Nous devons assumer un choc de financement public. Face à ces défis, pauvreté, climat et biodiversité en même temps, on doit investir beaucoup plus. Et nous ne sommes pas au rendez-vous.
The summit has no mandate to make formal decisions. Climate and anti-poverty campaigners say that without taxes on fossil fuels and financial transactions, it won't achieve its goals. Neither are on the agenda.
Extreme heat and storms are sweeping across much of Europe, and summer has only just begun. Residents in the Hungarian town of Igabakta woke up to damaged houses and other structures after overnight storms brought down dozens of trees. The torrential rain followed several days of temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius. Further south, Slovenia has also been sweltering for several days, and police say a child died while locked in a parked car, but release no further details. And now the extreme temperatures have spread to Italy.
The first heat wave has officially hit Italy this week. Today, temperatures are expected to reach up to 40 degrees in some parts of the country. Italy's health ministry issued amber alerts covering around 13 cities, and affected areas also include major cities such as Rome, the capital where we are now, but also Bologna and Florence. On Friday, other amber alerts have been issued in other parts of the country, in Italy's south, for example, in cities such as Bari and Palermo. And the island of Sardinia is expected to be the hardest hit, with temperatures rising, expected to rise above 40 degrees in some cases. The government's advice in these cases to try to stay indoors as much as possible during the hottest hours, but also to stay hydrated. Now, Italy is quite used to heat waves like this one. 2 years ago, the region of Sicily experienced the hottest temperatures ever recorded in Europe, and that was in August 2 years ago. But clearly, heat waves like this one have become more and more frequent as a result of the climate crisis. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.